Good evening to you all. We join again for the discussion on law of sea and maritime law. This is week 2, lecture 4. Now, in the last lecture, we were discussing on how the distances will be decided and mainly the territorial waters and how the rights will be decided between the two coastal states. So this is the third slide. Here you can see in the state B, it has lesser coastal area, state A has more coastal area, and there is a dent here. This one here is the dent. This is the dent area, and then the water body, this gets wider here across when it is outside this landmass. Secondly, in state A, there is a small island here. So how we will draw divide the territorial waters, whether we decide the territorial waters from this way or this way after the island. So from this map, it will be more clear. So we take this for understanding the position. Now, as stated to you earlier, that we take the furthest landmass point. So this is one, and from this state B, this is the one. Now, since the coastal line of state B is a bit smaller than that of the state A, so here the furthest point of state B that will share with the 2 points from state A. Like you see here, there is one line drawn from here, state A, and then there is another line drawn from here from state A that follows the common point, that is this point of state B. So then there is another furthest point from this part, here it is, from here on to here on, it also shares. This is the common for the two states. State A has, this point is common for this point also and for this point also. So then from here on, why it is so? Because there is a dent here, and the furthest point, that is the landmass point, gets somewhat after this dent. So this dent creates the gap. And it would be difficult to take this one because that won't be the right measurement, and as per the law also we consider this part as the internal waters of this state A. This is the internal waters of state A. So we will have to exclude this, and after this internal water area we take this point, and from this point onwards we draw a straight line here to the furthest landmass point of this. And since the coastal area of state B is smaller, so here again we draw a line from state A to this point, state B. Likewise, another such, now comes the island. Now this island is somewhere here, and we have to take the furthest landmass point. This was the one, and this is the one. So from here onwards we draw, we do not take any furthest landmass point like this or this. We take simply after the island, or the island's furthest landmass point to that of the furthest landmass point of state B. And this is how and then there is a median line drawn in between. So this is the extent of division between the rights of the parties across the water body. That means they will have the territorial waters all across like this. And then, from point this onwards, it will be to this extent, from this point to this extent, to this, from this point to the western side to this extent, and to the perpendicular to this extent, and to the eastern side to this extent. So this is how the rights are decided between the two states. Next one is even more complicated. Now here you see the modified equidistance giving. This is the simplified, and here they have taken a bit modified version. Now here you see it's not based on the straight line, the midpoint. So state A here, and then there is another state B here, and this is the proportion of coastline is quite different, you can see here. And moreover, it's not only between the two states, but there is a third state also here, and we have to draw the territorial waters and the contiguous zone and all these areas. So here we take firstly we draw a hypothetical median line. This is the hypothetical median line that goes in between, but this is not the point to decide here, because here we can see, since there is a dent here in this state, there is a dent here, so we cannot rely on the straight line here for the measurement, so we will have to take that dent here. So another line is drawn, you can see here another line which is a bit curved line, so that covers the dent part of this boundary. And now we have to draw the midlines. So finding out the furthest point. So furthest point for up till the midpoint here to the midline, and then to across the dent area. So we draw perpendicular lines to this, more of the perpendicular lines to this, and then we join it to the straight lines from here onwards. So likewise it goes here. So far as this distance is concerned, not much of the lines are to be drawn here, because it's a dent, and up till the midline here from state A to this midline, it has the equitable division. So it up till this point. So the in between area from this the dent line or the curved line to this midline, it does not belong to any of the country mainly, but state A has the right up till this extent towards this straight line area. So this is how we decide the border between the two states when there are quite different patterns across the landmass. Again, here we take another example here. Yes, this is another example. Now this is with regard to the Thalweg line. What is the Thalweg line? It is somewhere when the river water merges in the sea water, and partly the river water decides the boundary between the states. So it's a actually, this Nevada and Arizona, they both belong to United States. So this actually is somewhat within the country, but we'll come to also an example. We'll discuss the example where there are two states facing partly the river side. I mean, part of the landmass division between the two countries is by the river, and then partly it is by the sea. We'll come to that also. Let's take this one. This is the one, Thalweg line. So here it is Iran and Iraq. It's divided partly by before Arabian Gulf or the Persian Gulf. This Shatt al-Arab, this is the river. So it's divided between Iran and Iraq. You see better map here. You see here. This is the line. It's of this, and it divides. After that is the Persian Gulf area. Now, how we decide that whether we take this much of the, because this river water, as we have also discussed in Bangladesh case, partly it will take, sometime it will take this much of area from this side, and this is Iran, this is Arabia, and partly it will, this is UAE, and this is Iraq. Partly it will take this much of area like this, and now it's the river from here, all right. So how we will decide the boundaries? So in that case, the formula that is applied is known as Thalweg line. So Thalweg line says in such cases where partly it is from the river waters and partly it is the sea waters. So far as the river water is concerned, we cannot rely upon the midpoints, okay, but we take the deepest point. Deepest, Thalweg line means that is the deepest points. Why deepest point? Because although the river may keep on changing its course, but it does not change the deepest point in case of river, in case of river dividing two countries. All right, and this is one example. So that is what we mean by Thalweg line. So what is the Thalweg line here? Is a concept of river law defined under customary law either as the midline of the main navigation channel. It can be midline. How it can be midline? Because if midline or the midpoints of the river, they are the deepest point. So then naturally we have to accept it. But if the midline are not the deepest point, then we know that river will change its course often. Every year, or if not every year, after some years it will be changing its course. So it's never static. So in that case, we need to take the deepest water point. The purpose of Thalweg line in the matters of delimitation is to ensure an equal share of navigable channel between two sovereign states, taking into account the navigation interest, because then only we can decide in a very justifiable manner or in a very equitable manner what are the rights of state A, what are the rights of state B, and when they have the common water body to share. That water body partially consists of the river waters. As compared to median line, the Thalweg line as a single rule was less used for maritime delimitation. Basically, as stated earlier, that it is part of the law on river waters, so it is less used by the maritime, because maritime is more focused on ocean and the sea area. So there we do not very often apply this Thalweg line rule, but it is applicable. One example is the Alaska boundary arbitration between Great Britain and the United States. This is one example where the border division between Alaska boundary and the Great Britain was done by the Thalweg line. Then comes another topic, what is strait? This is important because of the passage, whether the coastal countries can deny the passage across the strait. Now, some of the straits, they occur naturally, and some of the straits, they are man-made. Basically, it is the channel of water used for navigation and also for the transportation. Mainly, they are very popular sea routes for the transportation, and they shorten the distance between the two countries or between the two water bodies also. So a strait is a narrow body of water that connects two larger bodies, like for example, it's in the Suez Canal. If fractures in an isthmus are created by, it's a fracture. Now, it's a man-made, partially it's a man-made, are created by human activity, the straits are usually called canals. The Suez Canal was constructed in 1869 as waterway between Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea. So these are the two big water bodies, and in between, since they were not connected, there was the land area in between. So from that land area, they created a canal that links the two main water bodies. So that has reduced the distance between the two water bodies. The Suez Canal allows transportation between Europe and Asia without having to go around the entire continent of Africa. It is an important economic strait. You see here how the Suez Canal is functional. So this is the Red Sea area, and this is the Mediterranean Sea area. This is Asia, mainly the West Asian region, and this is the African region. So let's take the example that this is the Suez Canal that has created the route all across here. So if there was no Suez Canal, all this land area, the Egyptian land area and this Israel and all this, they remain landlocked. So if someone has to pass through this, so from Red Sea area, then it will have to take this Gulf of Aden, Somalia, and after covering all across Africa, then it will reach this point. So for reducing the distance, you can imagine to what extent the distance has been reduced by this strait, or you can say the Suez Canal. Then the question arises, what are the rights of these coastal states? Now, of course, the canal has been constructed and it's a functional. So what will be the rights of the Egypt, whether they can stop the passage of the ships, whether they can stop the movement of the ships for reasons, or they need to determine the reasons on the basis of which they can stop. So it cannot be the frequent assertion of their rights that can lead to the restrictions on the movement of the ships, but there has to be some genuine concerns that can only lead to the restrictions on the movement of the ships. Now, what are that? International states, so basically it is covered under the different act. Although UNICLOS has introduced or it has included certain articles concerning the rights of the parties with regard to the states, what do we mean by the term states and how they are beneficial for the member states. But then there is a separate agreement also, and international law works on that separate agreement for the states. Article 16, Clause 4 of the 1958 Convention on Territorial Sea declares that there shall be no suspension of innocent passage. You see here, no suspension of innocent passage of foreign ships through strait, which are used for international navigation between one part of the high sea and another part of the high seas or territorial sea of foreign country, even if it is the connecting the territorial sea of another country. So it won't be the innocent passage. Innocent passage is the passage that is requested by the ship in case it's in danger or force majeure or for some necessary reasons. So after declaring that it is innocent, it will be allowed, the passage will be given to such ships. Except for the internal waters. For the internal waters, then it will have to seek another special permission. But so far as the territorial waters is concerned, it is permissible. Now, since why it's the question of innocent passage from the strait, because it's the distance of the territorial sea water, the distance of the contiguous zone, that is not 12 nautical miles all across the strait usually. It's always lesser. Reason being because the straits are usually the narrow channels of water. They are linking the two bigger water bodies. So in the light of that, we need to understand that it is like acting as a bridge between the two bigger water bodies. So how can we expect the territorial sea water to be of a very great distance, or let's say to be a normal distance of 12 nautical miles? So based on that, all kind of rights cannot be claimed. The 1982 Convention established a new regime for states used for international navigation. The principle is reaffirmed that the legal status of the waters of the state in question is unaffected by the provision dealing with passage. A new right of transit passage. Now, it's a term is used as right of transit passage when it comes to the state, is posited with respect to the state used for international navigation between one part of the high sea or an exclusive economic zone and another part of the high sea. So, earlier we discussed about the innocent passage. Now we are here discussing also right of the transit passage. Why it is transit passage? Because it is connecting with the two bigger bodies of water, whether they are the sea or the exclusive economic zone area, or it can be one bigger body of the water and another territorial water. So basically that acts as a transit path. The state acts as a transit path. So what kind of rights the ship does have, or to what extent the rights can be asserted by the coastal state, there has to be a right balance between the two parties. International navigation between the states used for international navigation between one part of the high sea or an exclusive economic zone and another part of the high sea or an exclusive economic zone. It involves the exercise of freedom of navigation and overflight solely for the purpose of continuous and expeditious transit of state, and does not preclude passage through the state to enter or leave a state. Now, this also equally applies to the flight. That means if an aeroplane is flying over the strait area, so it won't be restricted like based on the rights asserted by the coast area. Why? Because they do have the right of transit passage. So that is a different kind of right. So therefore, it applies to the sea passage or the passage of the ships, and then it also applies to the flight passage solely for the continuous and expeditious transit of strait, and does not preclude passage through the state to enter or leave a state. So bordering that state. So that is extended up to the passage through the state to enter or leave a state which borders the strait area, or the coastal state we can use. So here the term, instead of using the coastal state, they have used the bordering that states. States bordering the state in question are not to hamper or suspend transit passage, which is important. Next is with regard to the jurisdiction of the coastal states, to the jurisdiction of the coastal state vis-a-vis the ship, and that the jurisdiction means the legal jurisdiction. Now, to what extent that jurisdiction gets extended? Because a ship usually is termed as kind of having its own flag, and that flag belongs to the country of registration. So whether the coastal state can apply its law or can the ship, although having the flag of another country, can be subject to the jurisdiction of the coastal state. Only on what exclusive grounds can it be the part of the jurisdiction of the court of that coastal state. So that need to be defined. Otherwise, there will often be the issue of interest, or it can be the coastal state asserting their jurisdiction over the ship that is closer to its territorial waters, or closer to even its contiguous zone, or even at the exclusive economic zone. So based on the international law and also the principles that the UNICLOS has followed, the right kind of determination has to be there, and subject to the interpretations also. The right kind of determination cannot be absolute, because that may vary from conditions to conditions. So therefore, in the light of this, certain provisions have been included under Article 27 that deals with the criminal jurisdiction of the coastal state on board a foreign ship. Now, what is a foreign ship? Foreign ship is a ship that is not registered in the coastal state, but is registered in some other country and is carrying the flag of that country where it is registered. And now it has entered either the territorial waters or the contiguous zone or the exclusive economic zone area, because in all the three jurisdictional division, the coastal state does have the different kind of rights, and that rights can be asserted by the court of law having the jurisdiction. So it's simply by stating that the coastal state does have right is not sufficient. So it must be complemented by the fact that the court does have the jurisdiction to affirm those rights in one form or the other. So here Article 27 of the UNICLOS states about the criminal jurisdiction on board a foreign ship. The criminal jurisdiction of the coastal state should not be exercised on board a foreign ship passing through the territorial sea to arrest any person or to conduct any investigation in connection with any crime committed on board the ship during its passage, save only in the following cases. So the general rule that is introduced in clause 1, that the coastal state does not have the right to arrest any person or to conduct any investigation in connection with any crime that is committed on board. That means inside the ship, and the ship is carrying the flag of another country and is registered outside. That is, it's not registered in that particular coastal state. But still, there can be grounds on which the jurisdiction can be availed. So, what are they? If the consequence of the crime extend to the coastal state. So, if for some reasons the consequence of the crime or the result of that crime extend to the coastal state where the ship has entered, or let's say the ship is closer to it, so in that case the coastal state can assert those rights. It can apply its jurisdiction. Now, what can be the consequence of the crime? The consequence of the crime can be like the death of the person belonging to the coastal state. So definitely that means the person who has been killed in the ship, he is the citizen of this country, the coastal state country. So the coastal state country does have the jurisdiction. Next is if the crime is of a kind to disturb the peace of the country or good order of the territorial sea. So the coastal state to which we are talking about, and their territorial sea where the ship has entered. So if there are, let's say, some people, those who are spying in that for that country, or let's say there are people who can bring civil unrest, or there are outlawed people or the political people who can influence the politics of the coastal state. So in that case, they will take cognizance of it. The court of this coastal state, they will take cognizance of such persons, and mainly not such persons, but if such persons, they have committed any act, and because of the commission of their any act, that is very likely to disturb the peace of that country. For example, let's say there are chances of a rebellious movement, and those people who are sitting in the ship, they are trying to provoke the people of this coastal state for any civil unrest or for any rebellious movement. So in that case, that will be disturbing the peace of the country or the good order. If the assistance of local authority has been requested by the master of the ship or by diplomatic agent or consular officer of the flag state. So it can be other way out, like the captain of the ship. He has requested the authorities of the coastal state that we need some help from your side, and we need the assistance of local authorities, we need the assistance of the court services or the court system from your side. So please do help us. So that can be one such situation. Or the diplomatic agent, that means the ambassador of the country who is stationed there. Ambassador here means ambassador of the country to which the ship is registered. He has requested the government of the coastal state to provide them any legal assistance or to provide them any judicial assistance. So in that case, such request can be complied with. Or the consular officer of the flag state. So either the consular officer of the flag state, they request the judicial system of the coastal state to give certain help. So in that case, the local authorities or the judicial bodies will apply their jurisdiction for supporting the person or the diplomatic agent. If such measures are necessary for the suppression of illicit traffic in narcotic drugs or psychotropic substances, or there are chances that the ship does contain some illicit traffic in narcotic drugs, that means it is in one way or the other connected with the transportation of the drugs. So their criminal charges can be framed, and then the persons, through the legal order, they can take the measures to restrict the entry of that ship across the coast, or they can seize the drugs or the narcotic substances. So that means it gives the jurisdiction to the court of that particular coastal country to enter into the ship and to do the checking or to take whatever criminal law of that particular country permits them to do. In the cases provided for in paragraph 1 and 2, the coastal state shall, if the master so request, notify a diplomatic agent or consular office of the flag state before taking any step, and shall facilitate contact between such agent or officer and the ship's crew. In cases of emergency, this notification may be communicated while measures are taken. So what further it says, in cases provided for in paragraph 1 and 2, the coastal state shall, if master so request, master here is the captain of the ship, so request, notify diplomatic agent or consular office of the flag state before taking any steps, and shall facilitate contact between such agent and officer and the ship's crew. So it can be that the ship, captain of the ship prior to informing the authorities of the coastal state, they have informed their own diplomatic agent, or they have informed their ambassadors, and after informing them, they are requesting the judicial support, or they want the coastal state to take certain actions from their side also. So it can work like that also. It's not that they have the choice either to go for the diplomatic help from their own diplomats or their own diplomatic agents, and the second choice is that they can take the legal help from, or the judicial help from, the coastal state. So they can take both the things. In cases of emergency, this notification may be communicated while the measures are taken. So the diplomatic agent or the diplomats, they will be priorly informed. The judicial officers, or let's say the judicial body have been of the coastal state, they have been informed and their request have been sought. Or otherwise also, if the diplomatic agents, they have been informed priorly, so the judicial officers of the coastal state, they will be informed that the diplomatic agents, they have been also informed. In considering whether or in what manner an arrest should be made, the local authority shall have due regard to the interest of navigation. So they will keep in mind the interest of the navigation. So, and because there are other passengers also sitting on board, or the other members or crew members there, so their rights should not be affected, or they should not feel being deprived of the urgency. So keeping in mind that the arrest orders will be made. So I thank you very much for being part of this discussion, and we further continue this discussion again on this topic of criminal jurisdiction of the coastal state. Thank you very much.